There is a story of this old Jewish rabbi who was put in a Roman prison. He received a regular ration of food and water. As time passed, he was observed to be losing his strength. The prison officials were both puzzled and concerned, and so they called a doctor. The doctor diagnosed the patient as suffering from dehydration. But the prison officials couldn't understand how this came about, because they believed that the rabbi's ration of drinking water was enough for him. So the guards were told to watch this old man closely to see what he did with his ration of water. It was then that the puzzle was solved. The guards saw the rabbi performing the religious ritual of washing before he prayed and before he ate. As a result, he had very little water left for drinking. This story helps us appreciate better today's gospel. It helps us understand better the shock and discouragement the Jewish leaders felt when they saw the disciples of Jesus ate without performing the ritual washings. And today's gospel focuses on one of the basic disputes between Jesus and the Jewish leaders. Let us now take a closer look at what this particular dispute involved. When the Jews talk about the law, they mean one of two things: either the written law or the oral law. The older and more important of these two is the written law. It is set down in the Torah. That is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. It is sometimes called the Law of Moses. Some of these laws are concrete, very concrete and specific, whereas others are still very general. They are more the norms than laws. So for the long time, the Jews were contented with these general norms. They applied them to their lives as they saw fit. Then, beginning with the 5th century before Jesus, there emerged in Israel a group of legal experts, the lawyers, called scribes. They found that the general norms were too vague, and should be spelled out more in detail. And so they proceeded to spell them out in detail. And this gave rise to the second set of laws, the oral laws, or the oral traditions. About the same time, many Jews wanted to imitate the ritual holiness of their priests. For example, according to the written law, ritual hand washing was required of all priests before they entered the temple sanctuary. Its purpose was to wash away all ritual uncleanliness so that they could worship God more worthily. Gradually, the people began to imitate the priests and wash their hands before praying, and later also wash before their meals. By the time of Jesus, the Jews observed all these oral traditions just as minutely and faithfully as they did the written laws of the Torah. Of course, the idea behind all these observances was good, noble. It was to try to make religion permeate every action of the day, to make religion as a way of life. It's good. But in the course of trying to do this, something sad, something unfortunate, something tragic happened. Slowly, religion began to degenerate into an activity of performing external rituals. To observe these rituals was to please God. Not to observe them is to sin. In short, observing these external rituals became identified with being religious, being holy, and serving God. This kind of legalism is dangerous, misleading, because theoretically someone might hate another with all his heart, but that may not matter to him, to that person, as long as that person carry out the correct hand washings and observe the correct laws of the cleanliness. An example, a story of a Muslim pursuing an enemy, a Muslim pursuing an enemy in order to kill him. And in the midst of the chase, he heard the public call to prayer. They pray 5 times a day, They heard the call. Instantly, he got off his horse, unrolled his prayer mat, knelt down, and prayed the required prayers as fast as he could. And then after that, he leaped back on his horse and continued chasing his enemies. It was precisely this kind of legalism, external acts, that Jesus opposes so much. So sisters and brothers, how does all this apply to us? It warns us to be careful, that we too must guard against identifying religion, identifying our faith merely with performing external rituals and external acts. It has its place. They are necessary. We need rituals. For example, we come to church every Sunday. We may receive Holy Communion. We may say the rosary. We may wear our crosses and rosaries. We may hang our rosaries inside the car. We may attend novenas, fasting and abstaining from meats on Friday, First Friday devotions, Holy Hour, etc. But don't get me wrong, I am not discouraged these forms of piety. If there are true expressions of our faith and love. But they can be dangerous, and if we are not careful, that could lead to mere externalism and complacency in our religion. We can easily do all these things mechanically, instead of mindfully. Nowadays, I would remind you before Mass, mindfully, because it can be very mechanical. mindfully, instead of mindfully with loving attention. That is a practice of mindfulness. And with sincere devotion. So what counts is not what we do externally, but the love in our hearts that motivates us to do what we do. External pious practices are no guarantee of being devout. God requires a piety which involves not only our prayers, but also our conduct and behavior, not only our lips, but also our hearts. One without the other is hypocritical. There is a story of a so-called holy man in India, a Hindu. He was returning to his native village after making a long and difficult pilgrimage to the Ganges. And for us also, we make pilgrimages, and next year, many will be making pilgrimages because it's a Jubilee year. He walked, bearing high the yellow bowl in which he had brought home some of the sacred water from the Ganges River. The Hindus believe that this holy water washes away their sins. A beggar who was watching this man came and knelt before him and begged him for the drop of this holy water. At first, this holy man ignored him, but when the beggar persisted, he turned and cursed him. And then the beggar said, he has washed his body in the Ganges, but his heart is not washed. And his faith in his ancient religion was broken. Is a matter of the heart.